Hey everyone, it's Jananie and welcome back to my channel, The Story Ain't Over. So today I'm coming to you with a anticipated releases video for 2021. So it's almost the end of 2020 and thank God it is, because this year has been, well, a time. And so I'm so excited to be getting into 2021 and hopefully reading some really amazing books. So I thought I would round up all of my anticipated releases for next year. Most of these take place in the first half of the year because those are the books that have been mostly announced. A lot of the ones for the second half of the year haven't been announced. So this is kind of like a preliminary anticipated releases video, but there will probably be another one for the second half of 2021. So I tried to make sure that I got every single book that I could possibly, you know, be excited for next year, but I probably have missed a bunch. So I apologize in advance if I have missed something, but let's just jump right in. I'm going to be going in order of publication, so we're starting with January and then going through, and I'll leave the release dates and titles and stuff on the screen. Okay, so the first book that I'm excited for is coming out January 5th, and that is Lore by Alexandra Bracken. So this is Alexandra Bracken's new book. It involves Greek mythology from what I know, and it has like this really cool Medusa head on the cover, which is super cool. And I'm super excited for another Alexandra Bracken YA novel because she's been writing a bit of middle grade in between there for Prosper Reading, I think it was called. But I did really like her Passenger and Wayfarer series, that like duology. And I know a lot of people who love the Darkest Minds series, which I haven't personally read, but I've heard good things about. So I'm excited for this book, and it just seems like an interesting concept. And I don't know a lot about this book, but I just read the description, and basically what I can gather is that the Greek gods, as like a punishment for something that they did, are forced to walk the earth and are hunted by the descendants of ancient bloodlines who are kind of going after them and trying to steal their immortality and their power. And so apparently the main character, Lore, her family was kind of like murdered by these descendants, I think, and the man who murdered her family is now god because he gained that power. And so she's kind of abandoned this whole idea of the hunt and doesn't want anything to do with it, but then she gets a shot at kind of revenge. And so she teams up with her childhood friend Castor and Athena, the goddess Athena, who is gonna help her out, and they're all gonna stop the rise of this like new god apparently. And this all seems very interesting, and it's set in New York City, so it's like kind of set in our real day. So I'm really interested to see how this is gonna go. It's like a very genre bending type of story to me, and I'm just really interested. Like, it seems super cool just from the description. Okay, the next book that I'm excited for is Happily Ever Afters by Elise Bryant, and this is coming out January 5th as well. And this is such a cute cover. I saw this cover and I was like, I need to read this because it's adorable. But basically it follows our main character Tessa Johnson, who is a 16-year-old who has always wanted to, you know, be the protagonist in her own love story, and she loves writing romance novels and things. And so she gets accepted into this like creative writing program, and she is like super excited about it, but then she just can't get the words to come. And so in order to kind of give herself real life inspiration, she decides to write down a bunch of things from romance novels that could lead to a happily ever after, and she's gonna go and do all those things. And so there's like this really cute love interest named Nico, who's like this brooding artist, and she's gonna see if she can find her happily ever after with him. And I think it's gonna be super cute. I love that it is a black main lead, and I'm loving the adorable vibes. Like, I think it's just gonna be such a fun and cute little romance to read during the winter. The next book that I'm really excited for is coming out January 12th, and that is Concrete Rose by Angie Thomas. So this is the prequel to The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas, which kind of like wrecked the world and continues to dominate the New York Times bestseller list, and I just have all the love for that book, and I think everyone should read it. But I'm really excited for this prequel because it follows the main character Star Carter's father, and he has like a really complicated kind of past, which you know from The Hate U Give, and this follows him as a teen. And so I'm really interested to see how this is gonna go, and also because it's gonna be kind of a little bit historical because it's gonna be set a couple decades back when he's a teenager. So I'm excited about that aspect, and I like that we're getting like a male lead because there's not a lot of those in YA. So I'm excited for this, and I love the cover. Like, I just love the bold red, and I know nothing about what's gonna actually happen in that book, and I actually kind of want to keep it that way because like just knowing the basic premise that it is a prequel and that it follows Star's father, I'm just excited about that. Okay, the next book that I'm excited for is If I Tell You the Truth by Jasmine Kaur, and this is also coming out January 19th, and this is a second book by Jasmine Kaur, and I actually read her first book, When You Ask Me Where I'm Going, and that was like a poetry collection, which I really loved, but the author is Canadian, which I really love. And in this book it follows a young young woman and her daughter who are fleeing Punjab to move to Canada, and it's kind of told partly in verse, I believe, and partly in prose, and there are parts of their story that actually show up in When You Ask Me Where I'm Going. So I'm excited to see like the actual full story in this book, and I love this cover because it's just so like beautiful and also like kind of abstract and strange at the same time, which I really like, and I really like her poetry as well, so excited for this. The next book is the one that I'm probably the most excited for, and that is also coming out on January 19th, and that is Winterkeep by Kristen Cashore. So if you guys don't know, Kristen Cashore I absolutely love because she is the genius behind the Graceling Realm series or companion set of books. So there's Graceling, Fire, and Bitter Blue, which are just some of my favorite books ever. I love them as fantasies. Graceling and Fire are probably my favorite. I didn't like Bitter Blue as much, but I in general just love that series. And so when I found out that there was going to be another book added to this series, like a decade later or something, I was so excited. And this book is set 4 years after Bitter Blue ends, and it is kind of following Bitter Blue in this book, so I think I need to go reread like the entire series again to kind of refresh because it's been so long since I read them. I think I read them like 8 years ago or something, like when I was in high school. But in this book, Bitter Blue and like her companions are kind of stumbling upon this new nation called Winterkeep, and it has like telepathic creatures, and like everyone likes each other in this country. And the really cool thing about this series is that each of the books features a very specific and interesting type of magic and magic system, which I really, really loved. And so I'm curious to see how this one is going to be in Winterkeep. And although I didn't love Bitter Blue as much, I still think I'm going to enjoy this and just returning to this world. And I'm hoping we'll get cameos from like the first two books. So I'm very excited for this, and I just think it's going to be amazing. But I definitely need to go reread like all 3 of the previous books, and I just cannot wait. And they are also getting new like covers and stuff as well, I believe, so I am definitely gonna go pick up those copies because I just cannot wait. Okay, the next book that I'm excited for is Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Melinda Lowe, and this is also releasing January 19th, 2021, and I'm super excited about this one because Melinda Lowe is known for writing lesbian fiction in YA for a very long time, and so this is her new book, and it is set in 1954 America, and it's a romance between a Chinese American girl and I think just like a white American girl, and they both discover this thing called the Telegraph Club, which is like this lesbian club, and it's in Chinatown. And so the two of them are discovering this bar and falling in love, but you know, Lily, the main character who is Chinese, has a lot of risk. Her father had like this hard-won citizenship, and so there's like the whole Red Scare going on at this time, and all of that's going on, and so she has like a lot at stake. And I feel like it's just going to be a really cool kind of story, and I just love this idea of a lesbian bar in 1954 Chinatown, and I think it's gonna be awesome. All right, the next book that I'm super excited for is Muse by Brittany Cavallaro, and this is coming out February 2nd, 2021, and this is a new book by Brittany Cavallaro, and I actually really love her Charlotte Holmes series, which is one of my favorite like mystery series ever, and I just devoured those books because they're just so much fun and just so exciting. But I've heard this is American Royals meets The Winner's Curse, and I love The Winner's Curse, and it's set in this kind of alternate version of the world in 1893 where there is an American monarchy. And so the main character is this young woman, and her father is an inventor, and he thinks that his like great ideas come from his daughter for some reason, like her touch or something, so he's kind of kept her captive, I think. And so Clara, the main character, is hoping to escape even as their province is starting to go into a war, and her friend is trying to help her join this resistance movement to help get the first queen on the throne. But when one of her father's inventions kind of fails at the World's Fair, Claire is taken captive by this governor named Remy, who is like apparently going to be the next ruler, I think. And he believes the same thing as her father, that her touch bestows some sort of grace. And so the two of them are gonna kind of help each other, and she's like kind of his muse. And it's this really weird and interesting situation, but I'm like so intrigued by just the general concept of it, and I think it has a little bit of like a fantasy element to it. It's part of the duology as well, so there's gonna be a second book, so I'm just excited to see where this goes beyond like what's in the description. The next book that I'm excited for comes out March 2nd, 2021, and that is Chain of Iron by Cassandra Clare, which is the second book in the Last Hours series by Cassandra Clare, and this is like the series that takes place after the Infernal Devices series, but before the Mortal Instruments series, so it's like that time in between at the turn of the century. And I love this series a lot more than I liked the Dark Artifices series, which is like sequel to Mortal Instruments. But I love this because we get characters from the Infernal Devices in this series, so I just love that aspect. So I'm excited to see where the series is going to go in the second book. I loved where things went in Chain of Gold and just how many possibilities are kind of left in the air. And so I'm excited to see where they're gonna go in this next one and how things are gonna unfold. All right, the next book that I'm excited for is kind of a different one, and that is Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. So this is the new book by Kazuo Ishiguro, and I loved The Remains of the Day by him, and I plan to read more of his books because they are more on the literary side. But this is also coming out March 2nd, 2021. This one feels a little bit more on the sci-fi-ish side, but it seems like a really kind of lyrical and literary book. And it follows our main character Clara, who is an artificial friend, and she is kind of some sort of being that like sits in the corner of this store and watches people browse and has like really intense observational skills. So she gathers all this information, but she's hoping that someone will come in and buy her at the store. And so she is like the narrator of this book, and it has some themes of like love and what it means to love even when you're kind of artificial, and I'm just excited by this. I think it's gonna be a really interesting and cool book, and it's gonna raise some really interesting themes. All right, the next book that I'm really excited for is Rule of Wolves by Leigh Bardugo, and this comes out March 30th, 2021, and this is the second book in the King of Scars duology. I think it's a duology. I'm not sure if it's 3 books, but this is the kind of sequel series to the Six of Crows duology. It kind of takes place after that, but it involves Nikolai Lantsov from the Shadow and Bone trilogy, and there's just so many characters that I love in this series. Although I didn't love King of Scars as much as I was hoping to, I still have faith that Rule of Wolves will be interesting and fun, so I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm not reading any kind of descriptions or spoilers because I just want to pick it up and read it and see where it goes and not have any expectations, so I think it's still going to be really great. All right, the next book that I'm excited for comes out April 6th, 2021, and that is The Box in the Woods by Maureen Johnson, and this is the 4th book in the Truly Devious series. So the Truly Devious series actually I thought had finished with the 3rd book and kind of wrapped up the entire mystery that was building over 3 books, but this is a new installment in the series following the same main character, Stevie Bell, but she's about to solve a new mystery outside of the original place that she was in, so Ellingham Academy. So this one is outside of that. It's like this new mystery. I don't know if this is like going to be the last book or if there's going to be more after that. I'm slightly skeptical about this one because I think that the series wrapped up really well the way it was, but I still think that Maureen Johnson is really good with mysteries, so I'm excited to see how this one will be. All right, the next book that I'm super excited for is probably like my second or like first most excited for book in 2021, and that is Anna K. Away by Jenny Lee. So for those of you who don't know, I absolutely loved Anna K. by Jenny Lee, which came out earlier this year. It's like one of my favorite books of this year. It's one of my favorite books ever. It's just so soapy and dramatic, and I love it. But this book comes out April 27th, 2021, and is the sequel to Anna K. And so this book follows our same main characters and all of their crazy scandals and all of that. But in this book, Anna K is getting swept away by her father to go reconnect with her roots in South Korea because his side of the family is from South Korea. So she's over there while the rest of the crew is kind of in New York City still and dealing with their own dramatic things going on. And it's also dealing with the aftermath of the end of Anna K, because a lot of things happen at the end of that book, and I feel like it's showing the ramifications on Anna K's life from what happened, and I'm just really excited to see how this goes. I absolutely love Jenny Lee's writing, so I'm excited to just experience it again in this sequel, and I'm excited to see where she's gonna take it, because the first book was kind of a retelling of Anna Karenina, so I'm interested to see how this book is going to continue without the same source material. All right, the next book that I'm excited for is A Psalm of Storms and Silence by Roseanne A. Brown, and this comes out June 1st, 2021, and this is the sequel to A Song of Wraiths and Ruin by the same author, and that was one of my favorite fantasies of this year. It was just so much fun. I loved the 2 main characters and the way that they were both secretly like soft little muffins, and I honestly don't know much about the sequel. I just kind of want to jump into it without knowing too much because it is a sequel, but the series is inspired by West African folklore, and so there are some really wonderful elements to the fantasy world, and it's just a really enjoyable fantasy read, so highly recommend. All right, the next book is one that I'm so freaking excited for, and that is An Emotion of Great Delight by Tahereh Mafi, and this also comes out June 1st, and this is the new contemporary by Tahereh Mafi. So if you guys didn't know, Tahereh Mafi's A Very Large Expanse of Sea is one of my favorite books of like all freaking time. There's not another book that I love the way that I love that book. It's just a very specific way that I love it, and I don't know how to describe it, but this is another book by Tara Mafi, and she has written some other books that are more dystopian and like fantasy, but this is the second contemporary that she's writing, and it is also set in the same kind of time period as A Very Large Expanse of Sea. It's set in, I think, the early 2000s after 9/11, and the main character is a hijabi wearing Muslim girl, and she's dealing with all the Islamophobia and racism at that time. But this one seems like it's going to be a lot darker and a lot sadder and a lot more intense than A Very Large Expanse of Sea, which is saying something because that book was already intense and, you know, upsetting and sad, but also just really beautiful and loving as well. So I'm interested to see how this one is going to be, and I just love, love, love this cover. It's just so gorgeous, and I think it took the cover direction of A Very Large Expanse of Sea, but also added more to it, and I love the girl on the cover. So yeah, overall, just really excited about this. I think it's gonna like rip me apart, but I definitely think it's gonna be another favorite because I loved Tara Mafi's writing in A Very Large Expanse of Sea. All right, the next book that I'm super excited for is The Chosen and the Beautiful by Guy Vo, and this also comes out June 1st. And this is such an exciting book just from the concept of it and the cover. Like the second I found out about this, I was like, I need to read this. And this is kind of a reimagining of The Great Gatsby from the perspective of Jordan Baker, but with Jordan Baker as not like just a white girl, but she is an immigrant socialite Asian girl, and I am so excited for this. The description doesn't say like from what part of Asia she's from, so that's why I can't specify it for you guys, but I'm just so excited about this, and I think it's gonna be like so cool. And Great Gatsby is actually one of my favorite classics, to be honest. It was one of my favorites when I read it in school, and I am just really excited to see like a new version of it in this really interesting way with like a POC main lead, and I think it's just gonna be amazing. So very high on my TBR and like excitement level for a new like debut book. All right, the next book that I'm excited for is one that doesn't have a cover yet because it was recently announced, and it is a collaboration between multiple authors that I absolutely love. So it comes out June 22nd, and that book is called Blackout, and it is written by Tiffany D. Jackson, Nick Stone, Angie Thomas, Danielle Clayton, Ashley Woodfolk, and Nicola Yoon. So these are amazing black authors, black female authors in the YA space who are coming together to write this book together during a blackout in New York City, and it's following a bunch of black teens. And so it's a novel of 6 interlinked stories that are kind of coming together, and there's friendships and love and relationships, and I'm just so excited for it. And I like that it's not just like an anthology, it's actually like interconnected stories into one novel, and like the idea of the blackout in New York City and just like the play on the word, and I just love it. I think it's gonna be so awesome, and I just cannot wait. I think it's gonna be such a fun read, and it's like a celebration of black love, and I just cannot wait. All right, the next book that I'm excited for also comes out on June 22nd, and it is called My Contrary Mary, and it is the next book in the My Lady Janey series, or it's like a new series with Marys instead, and it's by Brody Ashton, Cynthia Hand, and Jodie Meadows, and they're the trio that brought My Lady Jane, My Plain Jane, and My Calamity Jane, and I love the first 2, which I've read so far. And the reason I love these is because they're usually like set in some sort of historical period following a young woman, but you know, changing up a bunch of history and adding a dash of magic and mystery and intrigue and some really crazy and hilarious times, and I love the narrators as well. And so this is just another kind of installment. I don't actually know too much about this one, but I'm just excited to see another book from these 3 authors. The next book that I'm excited for is The Chariot at Dusk by Swati Tirudala, and this is the 3rd book and I think final book in the Tiger at Midnight series. So this comes out June 29th, 2021, and although I didn't love the 2nd book, I really, really loved the 1st book, and so I'm super excited to see where the series is gonna kind of come together and end in this last book. And the 2nd book kind of left off with some really crazy questions, so I really want them answered. So I'm just kind of patiently waiting for this to come out so I can find out what happens in the end. But this is kind of a ancient India inspired fantasy. It involves like an assassin and a soldier who end up in this cat and mouse game trying to chase after each other in the 1st book because they're both supposed to kill each other, and they end up falling in love, which is just so much fun. And then it kind of expands from there in the 2nd book. All right, the second last book that I'm super excited for is Xoxo by Axio, and this comes out July 13th, 2021. And the reason I wanted to read this was because I saw the cover on Twitter and I was like, I need to read this because this is freaking gorgeous. And I think one of the reasons why I fell in love with this cover is because it somehow gives me Your Name vibes, the movie by Makoto Shinkai. I love that movie so much. It's an anime movie. If you guys haven't watched it, go watch it. But something about this cover gave me vibes of that movie, so that's why I really loved it. So I don't know a lot about this, but I just read the description. So it follows a cello prodigy named Jenny, and her one goal is to get into this like music conservatory. But then she meets like this really handsome guy named Jae-woo at this like karaoke bar one night, and in a moment of spontaneity, she lets him pull her out of her comfort zone, and they have a wonderful night, and then he disappears. And then 3 months later, the main character Jenny is going off to South Korea. So the first part was set in LA. So she's going off to South Korea to take care of her ailing grandmother, and so she is enrolled in this like arts academy, and she finds out that Jae-woo is a student there. And not just that, he is also a member of one of the biggest K-pop bands in the country, and which also means that he is strictly forbidden from dating. So that kind of explains why, you know, they had this one night and then he kind of disappears. And so Jenny has to kind of come to terms with the fact that, you know, she has feelings for him, but then, you know, she doesn't want to give up all of her dreams, and this could be risking all of that, and it could be really complicated. And I am just really excited for this. I think it's gonna be so much fun, and it's like exactly like the K-drama that I would want to watch. So yeah, just really excited for it. I think it's going to be so much fun, and I like that it's kind of set in both LA and South Korea, because I think that's going to be a lot of fun, and it's just a beautiful cover as well. So loving this. And then the last book that I'm excited for that doesn't have a cover is the third Gilded Wolves book by Roshni Chokshi. I am assuming, and I think it's planned so far, that this book is going to be coming out in 2021. So I thought I'd just mention it. I love the first two books, so I really want to see how this ends, and I really hope they don't push the release date to 2022 like they did with Silver Serpents. It was supposed to come out, I think, last year, but it came out in 2020, or like supposed to come out at the beginning of 2020 and they moved it to the end of 2020. So hoping it comes out by fall 2021 so I can see where this goes, but super excited for that. But those are all of the books that I want to talk about today. There's so many and I am so tired of talking now, but I feel like 2020 is going to be off to a great start with some really wonderful and amazing reads, so cannot wait for that. And I really hope that you guys will go pick up some of these or pre-order some of them, because that really does help authors if you go pre-order their books if you can. But I would love to know from you guys what books you guys are looking forward to in 2021. Let me know if I missed one that you think I would really like and what you're excited for, and let me know from the ones that I talked about today which one you're most excited for. I think my top picks are probably Winterkeep, An Emotion of Great Delight, Blackout, and Anna K. Away. And then I'm also just really excited for like Xoxo and The Chosen and the Beautiful, like some of those like new debut books. But I think all of them are just gonna be so great, and I cannot wait for this. But yes, go check out my Instagram and Twitter if you want to hear more reading updates from me on a regular basis, and I will see you in my next video. So please remember that the story ain't over. Bye.